Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Grind. My name is Kelly Johnson, your fun and friendly host. We're on episode 3 of season 2, the very best one yet. Shout out to my podcast team, Ambiguous Network, and fellow pods on there. Where to find more about the network, head over to ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com. If you're interested in joining the network, reach out to Will Tershuk and his team. If you're a new Daily Grinder, listen to our pod, or have been grinding with us since season 1, feel free to check out our journey so far and share your feedback with us. Get us on the map, help us grow, share this episode with a friend, and tag them on social. And give us a rating and quick review on Apple. Virtual high five to you in advance. Since the season started, I've been providing a fun fact to kick us off for our show. So Fast Facts with hashtag KellyFast. So the first one, just before we go live with our special guest of the day, here's our fast fact about today's theme: social media, marketing, and entrepreneurship. So there's over 3.5 billion social media users around the world, and roughly 45% of the population. In terms of business, 54% of the social browsers use social media to research products, and then 71% of consumers have a positive experience with a brand on social media. And they're likely to recommend it to their friends and family. So there's plenty of stats out there to get better insights in the global picture, ways to use on different platforms for different purposes, and experts out there to support and improve online presence and overall strategies. So that's just some fast facts to think about. Speaking of social media experts, let me introduce you to Ben Leavitt. So Ben is a social media strategist and YouTuber that creates content on YouTube to help businesses and people best leverage their social media to enhance their presence and business online. So he is also the host of Project Passion podcast that reaches out to many and brings more passion and fulfillment to their lives, both professionally and personally. So he currently lives in Guelph, Ontario. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks so much for having me on there. That was a great intro. You threw almost everything right in there and made my job really easy. So yeah, thanks so much for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on the Daily Grind today, Ben. So I guess first and foremost, for our listeners out there that don't know you already or haven't came across on you on multiple platforms, can you tell them who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Absolutely, for sure. So who I am is, I think you nailed it pretty well. I think the best label to throw on there is a social media strategist. I've tried to narrow down exactly the title for myself, and I think that's where I land on most best or the most fitting place. So what I do is exactly like you said, I create content on social media. So primarily my biggest channel would be YouTube. And over there, I make a ton of different content to help educate people and business owners on how to best leverage social media and the different channels that are out there, with my major emphasis is being on Instagram, YouTube, and podcasting, just to show people the tools that are out there, especially from like both the free and paid perspectives, to attract attention, create awareness, and enhance presence online. And that you can do that regardless of who you are or what your message is. It's a great platform. There's great platforms out there to do that. And I'm based out of Guelph, Ontario. I did not grow up here. I actually grew up in a other town that's not too far away, but I went to school here, so I ended up staying around once I graduated because I just I liked the place a little bit.
That's great. Very, very nice. Yeah, Ben is truly a daily grinder out there, and we have so much to cover on this podcast today. So I'm excited to jump right into it and all the expertise and share that wealth with our listeners out there. So how'd you become interested in like social media, podcasting, business, all that whole realm?
Yeah, so I knew from a very young age that I was definitely going to be involved in business in some capacity. I was the kid who was always making hustles, like flipping things, like trying to sell different like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, if people remember that back in the day, like all those, every opportunity there was to sell something or flip something, I was the kid doing that. So I knew that entrepreneurship was definitely the angle in which I would take. And then when I went to school, when I decided for post-secondary, so university, I definitely was going to pick business, but I picked going to school in university because I wanted to play football. So I actually played football for my first year at school. So that's really why I picked business. My parents really wanted me to go to university. So I was like, okay, well, if I have to go anyways, I'll go into business. And then I was in the co-op program at my school. So what that means that they make you have a few different work placements at a few different work opportunities. And with my major being marketing, I could find that almost every business owner that I met with or that I worked for, like they were all hyper concerned with social media, but they were all very, very confused by it and had no idea what to do, but they knew something that they should be doing. So, and then what really frustrated me was that from my actual program, they taught us very little applicable knowledge when it came to social media. But then when we got hired, they assumed because we were younger, when they were bringing us on as an intern, they figured that we would know social media inside and out. So I quickly saw that as a void in the marketplace, seeing as I wasn't being taught that, and I know that no one else is being taught that. So there's definitely a big opportunity here for me to become a relative expert and actually provide that value to people. So I put the emphasis on myself and taught myself beyond what they taught in the curriculum, and that's where it really came from. It was a kind of mix of an opportunity of like it came pretty naturally to me. I saw an opportunity there, and I actually truly enjoyed it. So it's kind of a mix of all three.
Yeah, that's really great. So you're essentially like basically self-taught because like you mentioned the university. I know where I went to school too. Like we didn't have those type of marketing classes available.
Yeah, so I'd say pretty well all self-taught 100%. There's a few like courses I've taken from people that I've looked up to in the industry and whatnot. I'm always eager to learn. If there's something that I feel that someone has a skill better than me, then definitely leverage off them. But yeah, the issue with conventional schooling and social media is that this stuff just moves too fast. So when you think about back in the day, or even now, when you make a curriculum in university, they spend a lot of time, a lot of upfront cost building a curriculum that the plan is to then teach us for the next 5 years. When it comes to social media, you can't operate like that because 5 years is way too long. It's like 20 years in social media time. So it's obsolete before you're even getting taught it. So yeah, I definitely learned that being nimble and learning on the fly is definitely a valuable skill. So I'd say most of it came from like YouTube, reading blog articles. A lot of it was free, to be honest. Like I'd say the vast majority of what I was able to accumulate in terms of knowledge was all from free resources. But yeah, primarily self-taught.
That's great. Yeah, just taking skills that you learn again, this like fast-paced environment, and just being able to learn from different challenges you come across, people that you meet on your platforms, things like that. That's really great, and you're doing something that you're passionate about. So yeah, how do you become more of an expert in that, and how do you find your passion in a sense?
Yeah, so I think I was always someone that had a lot of passion, and I was very big on doing things that you really, really care about. Because I thought like the idea of just going through the motions for an entire life, like that seemed kind of depressing to me. That some people they just accept that this is what they do now, and they're signing up for this for the next 60 years. Like that never computed to me. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like I'm going to do something that I want to be doing, and I'm going to be doing it as often as possible. So that's what was a big thing. And then so with like what I preach about with social media is that you can get access to so many different people. So for me, I was a kid from a relatively small town in Canada. I thought to myself, okay, well, I have all these aspirations and these people that I look up to in the world of social media and entrepreneurship. How could I possibly, from where I am now, even start the climb to getting to the potential place of being on their level or providing value to people like that? And social media and podcasting was like the only logical answer because you could start with for free basically. I was a student, so I literally started my podcast with a mic, which you see right here, which was like $100, and then started just reaching out to people all the time because I wanted to become more well versed in this, and I looked up to all these people. So just very simply just started reaching out to like 10 15 people a day, and I think through that was a very eye-opening and enlightening experience because so many more people said yes than I thought they would. So I think that was very, very cool to see that. Again, like I've always thought like people are people. So like when I've run into like celebrities or athletes, like, I'm always the guy like, oh, hey, I recognize you. Like, hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Whereas my family's always like kind of weirded out. They're like, oh, like, don't bother them. Don't bother them. I'm like, it's just a person. Like, you know what I mean? So for me, I think that was very eye opening to see that even on like a business perspective, that people are just people. And I think when you really bring it down to the human aspect of it, it provides an opportunity for anyone if they're willing to put in the time and become something of value to people.
I think you said it well there, Ben. It's the opportunity. And like you mentioned earlier, there wasn't like a course available or there wasn't like a platform. A lot of people weren't doing it at the time. But then when you reached out, people were saying yes. That's because there's a lot of people that are interested in learning more about social media, how to, better their online presence and their overall strategy, things like that. So that's really cool that you took that opportunity and like you made it into a business, or you made it you took like all the different synergies, I guess, like what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you're experiencing. You're an expert in this and you're able to share that knowledge with others. I think that's really important out there. But yeah, getting to, I guess, really great transition. So what was like your aha moment that like inspired you then to thus create your YouTube channel and like what all of that you've done now today?
Yeah, so I guess if I had to give an aha moment, I would say I wouldn't say there was one true one of those, but I will say there was one like moment that pushed me to kind of start. And so ever since I was young, I'm like, I'm gonna work for myself and I'll be in the world of social media in some sort of way. But I just hadn't started. I think a lot of people just push it off, push it off, push it off. And then when football was no longer a part of my life and I had torn my ACL, I went to YouTube and I looked up like ACL videos for like, so anybody who's unaware, it's a ligament within your knee. So when you tear that, it makes it difficult to do anything. So I tore that and I needed reconstructive surgery. So I went looking for videos and I saw that all of them were just absolutely awful. Like they were just so bad. So I was like, okay, this must be the universe telling me to just get started with YouTube. This is something you've been talking about for a long period of time. Let's just do it. And then I made those videos and they're awful videos, but because there was like nothing else there, they performed very, very well. So I was making money from YouTube in a very fast manner, like nothing crazy, but I will say there's a lot to be said about like the first dollar that you make online. Because when I saw that I could make a video that I knew wasn't very good, but it was still bringing me money every single month, that was very eye opening because it's like, well, imagine if this is good. Like, imagine if this was actually a valuable video. Imagine if this was more strategically placed and more optimized. So then through doing all of those things, I became hyper obsessed with how these social media platforms work and found that this was a natural aptitude of mine. Like I could understand things and they seemed very simple to me, but when other people spoke about them, they found them very complex. So I think that should be an indicator for people. If you ever come across that situation where other people are struggling and this is a breeze for you, that's probably a good lane that you want to be in, and you should probably double down in that. So that's the kind of opportunity that I saw for myself when doing this, was that I understood all of these things and it just made so much sense. So when I got a little bit of success, then it just compounds. It compounds. You build more off of it. You build more off of it, and then it becomes a self-churning machine.
That's great. Yeah, like you recognize your strengths basically, and again, you're serving people that like are looking for this type of material, and you're helping them in the long run. I mean, you probably have plenty of success stories on not just YouTube, Instagram, like all your channels, people reaching out, your clients, things like that, and it's making a business both with their personal brand or their business as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's one of the coolest parts about it is that like it's amazing getting that one-to-one relationship with a client, but like that stuff that you know and you put in the work, so you physically saw it change. So that's still awesome. I still love that experience, but it's really cool when someone who just consumed your free content goes and makes like a great success story of it and then comes back and tells you after the fact, like, oh, I did all this following what you said. Thank you so much. Those are awesome. And like, well, there's every single time I get one, it's still equally as exciting as like the first time I got one of those. So that's really awesome. Definitely keeps me going. I love to hear those, and it's always super, super awesome to have that opportunity.
That's great. So how long have you had your YouTube channel, or how long has it been running?
Yeah, so I'd say it's been running. Like if you were to go to my channel, I think it says started in like 2016, but I'd say really like I'd say truly operating in the form that it is now, I'd say about 2 years. Before that, it was like the random videos. I had no idea what I was doing. It was like the stuff on ACL, like all like it was a mishmash of stuff, which I still leave up there just to show people that you getting started is very, very important. It doesn't matter if like you change lanes. I think the most important start is actually putting thought to action and getting things going. Because if I hadn't started there, then I wouldn't have learned all the things that then brought me to my actual destination. So that's I'd say to answer your question, probably about 2 years, but literally like 3 or 4, it's actually been in existence.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, keep the grind up. We like it here on the Daily Grind.
For sure.
So with all the success, you've got you earned your first dollar on YouTube or whatnot. So fast forward to today, you don't just have your YouTube channel. You have multiple other things that you reach out, communicate to your audience. Can you tell our listeners more?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest pillar of me from like a public facing sense is the YouTube channel for sure. But I'm also big on Instagram. And then my where I help people one-to-one is with my agency. So we primarily specialize within social media, again, with the two biggest things being YouTube and Instagram, just because we found that that's where we are best fit with my skills and then the skills of the people around me to complement that. And we also feel like in today's current state that those are two of the best vehicles to drive awareness for things. And also it's a lot more that you can actually like do things the right way and see the results. Like it's almost like you can gamify a little bit. So that's where we've put our place there. And then yeah, on my podcast, Project Passion, it's like a passion project. Like it's not as much of a big revenue generator as the other things are. But I will say that without my podcast, none of the other things would have happened. So even if I never build the podcast up to a huge revenue generation tool, I think I'll always still do it, because I think that was a big, huge foundation of what made everything else possible. So I think there's a ton of value there. And those are those provide real opportunities to get really deep into topics and to deep into things where I can provide help and maybe someone else I'm interviewing can, where it's just not possible on YouTube. YouTube is a very hard, fast-hitting platform. Instagram even more so. So there's so many things that I would love to go truly in depth with, and I know that could provide value to people, but it just wouldn't work on YouTube, unfortunately. So I cannot get that in depth because it wouldn't perform. So that I think podcasting provides you a different opportunity, and all of these things, like I think most businesses or most influencers, whatever you want to call it, like they're going to have a pillar, which for me is going to be YouTube. But like the true deeper relationships are typically made off of their primary pillar. Like, so you can tell that anybody who also follows me on Instagram and also listens to my podcast, it's like different levels of connection, different levels of being a fan. So being able to provide that person who wants that more information, it in different ways, I think is really powerful, even though it may not be contributing directly to like in a major way to your bottom line. I still think there's value because I think it all feeds in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it overall tells your brand story. Also, too, you get to tailor to your specific audience. So
exactly
like what you just mentioned, like there's people that follow your YouTube channel more than your Instagram, but they're looking for different content on both mediums, which is great. I think that's really cool, and you're able to find that balance as well as communicate to the right audience, and again have those success stories out there. I guess too, going now more on the podcasting side, so I mentioned briefly in the intro, so Project Passion. Can you tell us more about how you got that started? It was formerly a different name, but
yes,
you tell the deets.
So the podcast was really my first, because like especially in business school, and anybody who's in business programs can attest to this, that they preach the importance of networking. Like I said so often, there's definitely networking events at the school. They always stress that's super, super important. And I'm a huge advocate. Like I think your network is your net worth in a lot of senses. Like I think it's very, very powerful, very important. So with that being said, like now that these platforms exist, your network does not need to be limited to your area code. Like you can network with anybody that you look up to. So I took it very literally, and I started to think, okay, well, how could I potentially get a hold of someone's attention and learn from them, and also at the same time be educating others? And the only way you could really do that as someone who is an unknown is to have some sort of platform. Doesn't matter how small it is. If you have that platform, that's a piece of leverage. And I use this example every time because I think it's the best thing I can say. If I were to reach out to someone on a DM and say, "Can I get an hour of your time just to talk to you on the phone?" They're almost always going to say no. But if I say to be on a podcast, that whole dynamic is completely different. It's the exact same thing, but it's not viewed as weird now. And two, they're far more likely to say yes because there's a reason and a direct outcome of that exchange. So it's a lot more long lasting. Whereas if a call one-to-one, they can't help as many people. And the more successful someone gets, they can do less of those one-on-one things. But the platform provides the opportunity for you to get that same sort of one-on-one experience, but actually open it up to more people and grant yourself access to more people. So that's where it all started. And it kind of builds and piggybacks off of the YouTube channel, whereas like, I think for so long I was looking for like, what is my thing? And I think I figured out my thing is helping people with their thing. Like I think that was my thing that's why when I was like a while back, I couldn't pick exactly where I wanted to go because I was like, oh, when I know, I'll know. And I think through doing that, it was the fact that I loved helping people do what their thing was. And I figured out how to do that through helping them best leverage all of the different things at their disposal. So that's what I do. I go deeper into social media on the solo episodes. And then the people that I interview are all people who have gone kind of an unconventional path to develop careers, lifestyles, and businesses around their passions. So I try to share their success stories, their failures, their wins, their losses, all that stuff to try to help people to maybe shift their perspective or show them a kind of a blueprint if they want to do something similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great stuff. Project Passion that you started, Ben, and like you just mentioned, like you bring on a variety of guests, so your audience, like they could pick on different parts of the people's stories and again make a difference in their life and help inspire them to go forth with their own passions, things like that. I think it's really great. And with your I really like the quote that you had there: "Network is your net worth."
For sure, yeah, I can't stress that enough. So like, I think now podcasting got to the point where it's so mainstream where a lot of people, they kind of get like very pessimistic when approaching to it, like whether they're to start their own, kind of like a YouTube channel where they hear how many YouTube channels are out there and that's enough for them not to start. Where I would say that a podcast is probably the most valuable thing you could ever start for yourself, because even if no one ever listened to it, if you went into it with the sole intention of, I'm going to learn from this, I'm going to network from this and like see where it goes, there's so much more value that you'll get from that than you could be making from like anything. Because when you're expanding your network, especially if it's in a field that you're interested in, or a field that you want to be interested in, the relationships you're going to make, the conversations you're going to have, it's going to pay you dividends the rest of your life. So I always advocate starting a podcast, especially in my situation. Where do I start? How do I see where I want to be? I think I want to be up there. How do I do that? I think a podcast is one of the best and easiest ways to start.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. And again, you have material on your YouTube channel as well as on all your platforms, basically on getting to that point. You listeners out there that are possibly interested in starting your own podcast or being a part of one or a special guest, things like that. Lots of great resources out there. And podcasting, I feel like, or you know what's all trending right now.
100%. Yeah. Huge fan of podcasting. And I think everybody who saw how much money that Joe Rogan just signed that deal for the exclusivity on Spotify, I think that speaks to like this is significance that the platform's going to have moving forward. And I think that should be eye-opening and motivating for people to really commit to it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. It just kind of, it's out in today's world, obviously on your own daily grind, basically. So with Project Passion, so how long has that been around? It's a couple years, right, as well?
Yeah, so it's been over 2 years now. We did go through a name change not too long ago, but the whole show has remained the same. Even the principles of it under his former name was still the exact same show, basically, just wrapped under a new package. So it's been a little over 2 years now that I've been running that show.
You mentioned too, you interview a ton of talented guests on there. When we were recording today's episode versus when this episode will go live, I think your latest special guest was Bob Menery.
Yeah.
But you've had like tons of guests from across different industries. Like, list could go on. How'd you get in touch with them? Is that part of your network? People that you interact with? Yeah.
So that goes directly into what I was saying earlier, is how I was so hyper concerned, or not concerned, but like I wanted to so badly. All these people I looked up to, I'm like, how can I be friends with them? Because like I know they're just people like I am. So as long as I can give them something of value, like they'll probably engage with me. So initially, my first ever guests, I started exactly like I said before, just sending out. I put the onus on myself to send 10 to 15 DMs to people that I would want on the show a day. The majority are not going to reply, but you only need one win to keep the ball rolling. So by sending out 10 to 15 a day, like that only takes like 15 minutes, and you're going to get some people saying yes. And then, okay, now this is a real show. We got to keep doing this. And then another thing that I did, which was, I think, played a big role early on, is I went above and beyond to make the guest experience as awesome as possible. So I would literally get when I got them on my show, I would then get their mailing address. I would send them a letter and then a shirt and like a thank you note saying like, thanks so much for coming on your show, and please like let me know if you have any guest referrals. I think that helped a lot. And then I think where I started to get some of the more popular guests, I would say, is where I just really became like tenacious and obsessed with it. So I really, like, very similar to social media, there's a strategy to anything involved. So I just became obsessed with trying to get these guys on and leveraged any opportunity I had to capture some of their attention. So this is a pro tip for anyone, is that on Instagram, you can set up post notifications for any user as long as you're following them. So for anybody that I really wanted on their show, I would set up post notifications so that I could always comment on their stuff very quickly, like their stuff. So they're seeing my profile, and then also hop into any Instagram lives that they have. I've actually got 3 of my biggest guests from going into their live right away and then getting pulled in. And then they're on the spot. So if you bring it up that you have a show and you ask them to come on your show, they're going to say yes, because they're in front of thousands of their closest fans. They don't want to look bad, and like they want to give you the opportunity because you're showing initiative. So I think that was a massive thing, and it was strictly just from putting in the time and the effort, and it worked very, very well. I've gotten to 3 of my biggest guests, like I said, and it was strictly from that.
A really great advice for our listeners out there. Just grow your podcast, or again, if you're just starting one, or have a few episodes in. Really great stuff. I definitely did the Instagram trick. I did a Facebook Live instead with someone.
Nice.
Hey, it worked.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With going with podcasting, the importance of networking, things like that, staying in touch with people. I really like taking, you're mailing out to your special guests like a t-shirt, a thank you, things like that. Can you tell us, like, with your being active in social media, like the importance of networking and staying in touch with people?
Yeah, well, I think from a business perspective, like I think that's the big paradigm shift that I always try to get business owners to switch, like the view from like a lot of people in influencer culture, I put that in air quotes because a lot of influencers that we think are influencers they don't really have any real influence. And that's because they're just a figure. They're not a person. I think the more human you can make your interactions, the more benefit you're going to take from social media. So whenever I have people in say like a consulting arrangement, like I'll try to say like I want them to switch how they look at social media, especially Instagram. So I say instead of looking at it as like some vanity metrics to post things out there and get likes, I say this is like a one-to-one CRM system that you have access to all of your potential clients and you can reach out to them in real time. Like that is absolutely insane. So even if you just slowly start to compound and build your tribe through real relationships, it doesn't matter what kind of businesses you run. People buy from people. So when you become like, this is especially true for people who don't have like sexy businesses. So say like if you're a plumber or like you do like stuff that isn't glamorous, and then you do like, how would I post content about that? Shift the perspective and instead give the opportunity for a relationship tool to be built from there. And then another reason why every business should be on social media is that without being there, you don't have the opportunity to be shouted out or featured by other people. Whenever you go and provide someone a great experience, they want to pay it back. The law of reciprocity definitely holds true within business, and they want to pay it forward and pass it forward. And if you're not on there and they can't shout you out, they can't do it. So it's like at the very least, you should at least be on there and leveraging the one-to-one human aspect of it. So I think from a business perspective, that's where it makes a ton of sense. And then if it's more of like a personal brand, when people reach out to me and they're like, oh, like, why can't I grow my personal brand? 9 times out of 10, because they're doing anything of substance or anything of value. So many people confuse value with like high quality photos, and it's not the same thing. So like they'll be like, my photos are way more quality than so and so, but yet I'm not growing. And it's like this is just drives me insane. They'll send me a profile of like someone who's famous and be like, why aren't I growing? I'm posting stuff just like them. It's like, because they're famous. Like that's the difference. A celebrity or an actor or whatever, their persona, their look, like that is their value. As someone who they don't know, you need providing of sense and shift the way it's like. And one more paradigm shift there is view Instagram, YouTube, whatever, as value exchange platforms. Like they're someone coming to you to consume your content, they're giving you their time. If you're not providing an equitable return on that time investment, you can't expect it to grow. It doesn't make mathematical sense. It's like a business. If a business wasn't making money on a transaction, it wouldn't do it over and over and over again. So you need to get into that perspective and think about, okay, what can my value be? And then figure that out and focus on that. If that answers your question.
Oh yeah, that was a great answer, and plenty more, like 110% or even to whatever percentage you want to go above 100.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, being genuine on both on the personal branding as well as the business branding. And you mentioned too, Instagram, you can create a free account. It's completely free to create. And again, people like to pay it forward. I like to give shout outs to people when I have a great customer service experience.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where, like I said, if you're not there, you can't get the benefit of it. So I think even having some sort of presence, whatever, and it's one of those things where like if you don't start, you don't even know what you don't know yet. So like getting your foot in the door allows you to figure out, okay, you conquered the first challenge, you got to start it. Okay, then now what's the first post? It all starts with one. I think people get too overwhelmed and daunted, like they get so scared of it because they'll look at a brand like Nike or something like that and they're like, well, that makes sense, like they should have Instagram, I don't need Instagram. It's like, okay, well, there's still value for whatever you're doing, and it probably is gonna be a lot more personal, which is actually makes that each one-to-one interaction a lot more valuable because you can actually have that relationship and it's manageable because you aren't appealing to billions of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you don't have to go from like you create your Instagram account today and then you grow to like next day you become a Nike. No, you can definitely start small
exactly
and get there. It's very manageable. Staying organized, again, just taking all these key takeaways that Ben mentioned so far on this episode. Just find that balance, and if you're do something that you're passionate about too. Don't just create an account just to create an account. Do something that you enjoy working on or posting or commenting or however you stay active on social media.
For sure. Yeah, I do think that connection is very, very important. And so typically when I help people's businesses with their social media, like, typically they're very passionate about what they're doing. So it's like if they're able to let that come through in the content, people can feel that, and then actually makes them a lot more like wanting of being like a customer and a client to deal with them because they can tell that they're passionate, and that stuff's infectious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. The one-on-one personal touch, you be able to respond. Again, I think that really hits the nail on the head in regards to today's age. A lot of times service, it's very competitive and across markets.
For sure.
For consumers, purchases like tennis shoes or whatever you want to buy. So just having that that overall customer service experience, or that's really pleasant versus unpleasant, I think this is where we are. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So we talked about podcasting, we talked about YouTube, we talked about being a social media strategist. So for our listeners out there that want to learn more about it, or just what you do maybe on a daily grind basis, I know every day is different for you, but can you walk us through maybe some highlights of your day or things that you work on throughout the day? Or,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. So like as it's kind of funny because like, a lot of people are like, oh, you work in social media, like your days must be super exciting. They're not that exciting. I wake up around the same time every weekday. Usually go for like a walk or a run in the morning. Then I'll read a bit in the morning. I like to try to get that out in the morning, and then after that I will then come in and then get to my emails and whatnot. And then I'll typically spend like the first half of the day on client stuff, so stuff not for me, and then the rest of the other half of the day is stuff for myself. So like my personal brand, internally, like what we're working on with the team that I'm currently managing, and then seeing how we can scale that to then, because they typically very much feed off of each other. Like I feel like my business wouldn't be what it was if not for my personal brand, because all of our clients, like they want to work with me, right? Because they know me through social media. So I think without that, and if I don't continue to nurture that, I think it's also going to hold back the business. So I think there's a key emphasis to be put on both. So I try to give them time specifically for that every single day. And with like, because there's so many different aspects of my day, like just getting distracted is definitely a very real thing, because I could be working on 101 different things at once. So compartmentalizing things is very difficult. So I've tried to implement some things to do that. So oftentimes, I actually just recently downloaded this app where you can plant a virtual tree, and as long as you stay away from your phone for long enough, it'll grow. But if you open your phone and try to go off of the app, the tree will die. So you can do that. You can compete with your friends and whatnot. So I've been doing that to try to stay more productive. For anybody who wants to check that out, the app's called Forest. So that helps me a lot to say, okay, I'm going to put 45 minutes into this client task. I'm going to plant this virtual tree. I'm going to leave it, and it's just satisfying. Like, okay, you the proper time in, you got the task done, and you can now look at the tree. It didn't die. It's good there. It's growing. It's all good. So I think dividing things up and providing a specific time for a specific task, there's a lot of value in there. And I think a big thing that I do is like behind me I have a whiteboard, so I kind of break down my goals in terms of like a year, then like monthly, so for there would be some tasks that I know I have to get to, and then like what's immediately pressing. So I've got like 3 different sections on there. So the year being overarching, because I think that in most cases with how fast the world moves, especially in social media, like for me to set goals anything farther away than a year would be doing myself some discredit, like because things change so much. Like they change so fast, and they change so often. So I set my goal about a year in advance, and then the month is stuff that I need to get done, and then daily I also every single day write a to-do list for the day of tasks, and then it's pretty satisfying physically being able to cross those off as you get through them. But that's pretty well the day in a nutshell. So the client work, what you can expect to see there is just exactly what we've been talking about: formulating strategy, making sure that the designers are creating content for people's Instagram, video strategy, looking into YouTube. And then stuff for myself is really picking out, okay, what's next for a piece of content for podcasting? Who am I reaching out to? YouTube, what video am I making? Instagram, what's going on there? So that's pretty well what you can expect. It's all pretty well done from my desk, so it's not that exciting.
That's great. Yeah, you're definitely grinding out there. Lots of stuff on your plate, but you're staying organized. So I guess, yeah, to that organization question, how can like listeners, how do you find that balance? Do you have like advice for our listeners out there, you know, working on the client
Yeah.
work and all this other stuff? You mentioned the to-do list, and then you have the goals broken down. Do you have other tips and tricks for our listeners out there?
For sure. And I'm probably the worst person to give advice on organization, because I've like, if every report card I've ever received, it's always could be better with the organization, or is very unorganized. But I think with that is a lesson right there, is understanding where your skills lie, and that with that not being one of mine, I think it's very, very important to lean on other people. So like I know that I have areas of expertise, but the true organization is not one of them. But I do have a lot of people in my life who are very organized and very good at that stuff. So being able to have those people to lean on in situations is very, very important. So I think always outsource things that you can, that you're not good at, or at least lean on some other people that you know are good and that can help you out. And then building off of that is, so I've actually had a lot of help when I started up my business from a lot of friends of mine who were a little like farther along in their business, and they really stressed the importance to me to set up systems, so that, because especially in social media or anything that you're doing online, it can grow very, very fast, and it can become very overwhelming. And if you don't have a solid base and foundation of systems to go through all the processes of operating with a client, then it can become very, very cumbersome once you reach a certain threshold. And then it can become so stressful where it's not providing any value to you anymore because you're so stressed about it 24/7 because you didn't set up good systems to allow this whole thing to flow naturally. So I think that was a big emphasis of mine. I leaned on people who were way better at this stuff than me, and then put the time and money into actually creating systems that would be able to grow with me with the current tools I have at my disposal.
Yeah, that's really great stuff. I think you mentioned key takeaways there, just being able to, spread the wealth, and also, again, utilize your own strengths as well as utilize other people's strengths. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that really builds really great relationships down the road, both personally or in business as well. I to myself just ask people, my friends, if I have a question I'm not familiar with, definitely going to reach out because they're more better in that skill set or whatnot, or vice versa. People reach out to me to help out. I'm glad to do so.
100%. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I love that you put some emphasis on that because that is one of the most underrated skills I think people can have, and it's by being like by being humble and understanding that like you're not going to have every possible skill, and it's actually you do not want to be someone who has every single skill because you cannot be great at everything. So you're better off in most cases in life being somewhat of a specialist because then you. This is a line I always say is like become that person, because everyone loves to say when there's a specific subject or task, oh, I got a guy or I got a girl, right? They love to say that. So become that guy, girl, or person that is that person that's for that kind of thing, and you're going to be able to provide help as well as ask for it because if when the day comes and they need help with what you do, you're the person to do it. So I think that's definitely super, super valuable and a skill that you should start as young as possible because there's always going to be people better than you at certain things that could also help you through leveraging their expertise.
Definitely. Yeah, really well said there. I think it fits perfectly with today's episode. Time is valuable as well. So being able to, reach out to others and vice versa. I think just you utilize each other's time better, and you get to check your stuff off your to-do list every day.
Exactly. Everyone wins.
Yeah, everyone wins. It's a win-win situation. So yeah, Ben, we talked about your daily schedule. So what's on your daily grind in the upcoming months later this year?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a big thing on my end is that I've been delaying so long on developing like educational programs that I can have for people because with it being like running a business where it's like one-to-one consulting, there's a lot of people that I would love to help that probably couldn't afford, or it doesn't make practical sense for them to invest what it would cost for my business to one-on-one help them, or even in a consulting relationship. It would just be too expensive. It wouldn't be an opportunity for them, but I know I could provide them a lot of value, and I get asked about it so frequently. So I am working, and I've made some steps in terms of getting them going, in terms of creating these courses that people can consume on their own time for a far lower price point than it would be to work with us one-on-one, just to try to help more people in a way that is convenient for them and affordable for them too. So I'd say those are the two biggest things. I have two courses in mind that I'm currently planning out and going to start filming. So those are the two biggest things on mine. And then the issue with how we go is that when we do have clients and we do have videos to make, it's finding the time to put specifically to this because there's always stuff being thrown on the plate. Like I still have a lot of like videos that I need to make for myself, some brand deal videos and all of that stuff. But I'd say those are the two biggest things that I have on the horizon, the two courses that I want to make there that I think could have a lot of impact on people's lives and businesses, because there's so many people out there that I know I could help a great deal, but they maybe not have the bandwidth or the resources financially to pay for that one-on-one service. So if you can give them the same kind of value in a course that they can consume at their whatever's convenient to them, I think it's really valuable. So that's really important to me right now. And then the other thing is just trying to really maximize the value that we provide to our clients too, because the best word of mouth is a happy client. So just trying to keep them happy. There's a few clients that I'm working with right now that I see a ton of potential for. So just trying to maximize what we can do for them, because every success story from our client is also a success story of ours. So just trying to help them grow as much as possible is the stuff that we're working on in the near future here.
Yeah, that's really great stuff. Really exciting things on your plate, Ben, down the road.
Absolutely.
Gonna have to follow stuff. Yeah, this is great.
For sure. How about you? What do you have on the upcoming horizon?
Yeah, so we're in the midst of season 2. So we're about to hit our anniversary for the Daily Grind being 1 year old. So this podcast being that long. Otherwise,
congrats.
this is just another platform for my nonprofit. So just kind of working on our events in the fall, going on our turkey trots, hopefully to get fingers crossed on things getting approved with COVID going on with the max gatherings of 100 people or less. But I'm hoping that it breaks the 100 person mark so we get more people and raise more money and things like that. But so we're working on events. I'm currently actually in my own marketing course for online MBA. So I'm basically trying to study social media things, but I feel like even reading some of the chapters in the book, I feel like it's already outdated.
Unfortunately, that's kind of the way it is. I think that YouTube is always a great free tool to go on there and just consume a bunch of content. And then one other thing I forgot to mention that I'm really excited about that also like you reminded me because the whole COVID stuff, who knows what's going to happen, who knows what's not, is I have a few conferences that I'm scheduled to speak at, but again, it's not really up to us. It's up to COVID and seeing where that is. So that's another thing I'm super excited about. But all the stuff you're working on sounds awesome.
Yeah, both of us on our own daily grind, so let's keep it going. So
that's it.
Yeah. So Ben, do you have a word of the day to motivate our listeners out there?
So a singular word or like a quote?
You can do. I call it a word, but you can definitely do a quote.
Okay, so this is a quote that I like to use all the time, and because I don't know where I heard it or if I heard it from someone, I just say that it's my quote. But it's just a way I like to live life. So I'm better than no one, but no one is better than me. That's the quote I like to live by, just because I think that it comes back to that everyone is a person. So again, I don't view myself as better than anyone else, but there's no one better than me, meaning that you don't have any harder time or any worse time. Like you have the same opportunity, you have the same 24 hours in a day. So it is what you do with those 24 hours that will dictate your situation. Obviously, other people who are born with more advantages and disadvantages, without a doubt, but we do all have the same 24 hours in a day. And what you do with those is up to you. And that's going to have a direct correlation to where you end up and how much of your goals that you want to achieve that actually come to be. So that's my favorite quote.
Really like it. I think it fits perfectly with today's episode and your story and what you've shared with our listeners out there. Last but not least, if our listeners want to reach out to you, follow you, learn more about your brand, the podcast, everything, tell us more.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So I appreciate you granting me the opportunity to do that. So I'd say in terms of education for anybody who's listening, who feels like they want to learn more about the subjects that I speak, I say that YouTube is definitely probably the most value platform that I have. So I'd say start there. It's just Ben Leavitt. It's just my name. And then the podcast has a ton of value there as well on the similar subjects, and then as well from other people coming in there. And then on Instagram is probably the best place to reach me if you actually want to speak to me one-on-one. Like I reply to all of my DMs. I spend a good chunk of every day replying to those. And so if you reach out to me, I will reply to you. It may not be super fast, but I will always reply to you. So if you're looking to actually ask me a question, definitely reach out there. And then I always ask this as well for anybody who has a question through Instagram, is to try to be as specific as possible, because that gives me the best opportunity to help you. When people ask very, very broad questions, it's difficult to give you an answer. So if you can be specific about what you're struggling with, I'll always get back to you. So I'd say reach out to me there. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. I need to be more active, but it's just Ben Leavitt over there on LinkedIn as well.
Cool. Really great stuff, Ben. We'll for sure put Ben's contact info in today's show notes, as always. Thanks again for tuning in today's episode. A big thank you to Ben for being on the podcast. Ways to find the Daily Grind. Follow us on Instagram at KJF Daily Grind and on Facebook as well. Check out our website at www.kjfwi.org. Feel free to follow your host, Kelly Fast, here on Instagram at Kelly J Lefty or on Twitter at Kelly J Lefty as well. Until next time, my name is Kelly Johnson. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I appreciate it.